welcome back to Matt and Cheryl's Gen X Lit Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
And we continue our musical tour through the year 1982. If you are new to our podcast, the project is to create a playlist for a gathering of Gen Xers. It's the soundtrack of our lives, starting from our earliest music memories. Our starting point was 1972. We'll peak in our high school years. So we'll pick the most songs for our playlist from 1985 and 86, taper it down to the late 90s.
Which is kind of weird because those are going to be like the worst years.
I know. We're in 1982, which is still the good 80s as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah. We're right in the heart of it, I think.
As far as pop music is concerned, 82, 83 was an incredible time for pop singles. And we're going to focus on one band in particular today. Not that Cheryl and I are particular fans of this band, but they released, you're laughing already. They released a mega album in 1982, and it is a good album. There are some incredible songs on it.
Yes.
And we're going to add one of those songs to our playlist. The band is comprised of a bunch of session pros, and they played on a whole bunch of other stuff, not only in 1982, but in the years preceding and following. And we're going to take a look at some of those other songs as well and add another song that these guys played onto the playlist. The band is Toto. They released their fourth album in 1982, imaginatively titled Toto 4. Taking a page out of one of the bands some of the guys played with this year, Chicago, in the name of this.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, they were on Toto 4 this year. Chicago was on 16.
It's right. And that was a big record for Chicago. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Kind of a comeback for them. But the Toto record, well, first of all, it's their fourth album. Their first album came out in 78. Band was formed a couple years before that. The core of the band, guys knew each other in high school. They'd all been playing sessions around Los Angeles and getting pretty good, getting some good gigs. And the first record comes out in 1978. Now, I'll say Cheryl and I, neither of us are huge fans of Toto, but I would say there's at least two Toto songs that very nearly made our playlist. One was off the first record, Hold the Line, which was their first big hit.
I love that song.
I really like a song on their second album, Hydra, called 99, which was a minor hit. It was a top 40 hit, not a top 10. But that was playing right around the time I started listening to Top 40 FM. And I loved it then. I still love it now. Neither of those songs quite made it for us. When we were working on 1981, I listened to their third album, which came out that year, which I thought was terrible. It's called Turn Back. So this album was huge. They needed it too, because they were feeling some pressure from the record company because Hydra and Turn Back didn't sell up to expectations for Columbia Records, their label.
Yeah, this was a do or die album for them, and they pulled out all the stops and they came through with two huge singles. The album was huge too. I never owned this album at the time. I've only listened to it a few times just in the recent week or so. Most of it is just kind of forgettable.
Yeah, there's three excellent singles, I would say.
Three excellent singles, and the two biggest ones bookend the album. You know, they're the first song and the last song on the album. But I was really surprised to find out that this album won Grammys like crazy. It won Record of the Year, Album of the Year, Producer of the Year, which I do think that the singles were worthy of winning. But for album, I'm not sure about that.
The sound quality of this record is sensational. It really is a good sounding
And they
recording.
won Producer of the Year too, and the band produced the album, which is actually pretty cool. I mean, their story is really incredible. Like you said, they knew each other from high school. They all grew up in California, like Hollywood area. Yeah. And they were friends in high school. The Porcaro brothers, Jeff Porcaro, the drummer, Steve Porcaro, the keyboardist, and Mike Porcaro actually wasn't in the band until later. He joined after this album. But David Hungate, who was the bass player, and basically everybody except the singer, Bobby Kimball, were friends since they were teenagers. Oh, and David Page. David Page plays piano mostly. Steve Porcaro plays synths and, other keyboards. And those guys were really tight. They were friends. They played in different bands together. And Jeff Porcaro is really kind of the one that started doing sessions, started with Steely Dan when he was
really young.
Yeah. And so they all kind of followed
But
along.
it should mention that the Porcaro brothers, their father was a renowned jazz drummer, Joe Porcaro.
Yes.
And David Page's father was a very well-known composer and musical arranger by the name of Marty Page, who did a lot of work with jazz artists and in film and TV.
Yeah, so their families were
steeped in music from a young age. Yeah.
Right. But Steve Lukather, I don't even think I mentioned him. I should know way more about him too, because I just read his autobiography, which, by the way, is great. It's called The Gospel According to Luke. It's one of the best rock and roll autobiographies I've read because, number one, he's just an extremely entertaining guy.
And very open.
Very open, a great storyteller, and has a million stories. He's also a really humble guy. And the people that he's played with, all the musicians, including the Toto guys, who he's very close, like family with, he speaks so highly of these guys. And he just has a warmness about him that's super genuine. And it totally comes across in his book. And he really doesn't go into like super amounts of detail. I mean, he could have, I'm sure, because he has a lot of stories that he could have told. But I think that the main thing that comes across with this book is just the incredible catalog that these guys have played on. And it's just mind-boggling. He's got a list of all the songs, and particularly between 80 and 82, that's where the bulk of the songs are that he plays on in the albums. I mean, he must have literally been working every single day in those 3 years, between 80, 81, 82. It's phenomenal how many albums he played on.
They've played with just about everybody, and they know everybody else that they haven't played with. So they're very much ingrained in the industry.
Yeah. And it is kind of funny because, like you said, Toto's not a band that we're like really big fans of or anything. Like you said, the two singles I think are amazing from this album. I love Hold the Line, but that's about as far as I go with Toto.
I go to 3 singles on. I think there's 3 really good singles. And then there's a 4th that I think is pretty good.
There was a 4th single or just a 4th song?
There were actually 6 singles on this record. Make Believe was the second track on the LP, which was a single too. I think that's a pretty good song. But we're going to pick one song for the playlist. I think if you ask the guys in Toto, they'd say, this is our crowning achievement, this song. Although the other song that bookends the album, the last track, is the one that really seems to have carried through to younger generations, which is Africa. But the song that we're going to pick is Rosanna. And I think this is as good as any song that was released in 1982. Any record. Let's put it that way. Any record. You got to make the distinction. So you said they won all these Grammys.
Yeah.
They give a Grammy for Record of the Year, and they also give a Grammy for Song of the Year. So the Record of the Year Grammy, that's for the producers and engineers. That's the whole quality of the recording.
Okay. I've never understood that.
The Song of the Year, that's a songwriter award. So that's based on just the quality of the song itself, the lyrics and the melody. Rosanna is an incredibly excellent recording and a cool song and great performances across the board, and has several elements to it that make it really interesting.
Yeah, so I'm choosing Rosanna, and I do love the song Africa too. And the reason why Africa is so popular is because of Weezer. Weezer brought it to the current generation, but Weezer actually covered Rosanna first.
I find that odd because Weezer they're basically our age. I mean, they're our generation. Their Blue album came out kind of the tail end of the grunge era.
Yeah, but they still have albums coming out now, and they're still really popular with young people.
Yeah.
So when Africa started, it was a single on the radio. They were playing it on the radio all the time. And I think it's interesting to me because Weezer's version of Africa is almost identical to Toto's.
Says a lot for Weezer. I think they're underrated musicians. I don't think a lot of people perceive them as being great musicians. I've heard that Rivers Cuomo is a virtuosic guitar player, but it's not something they do on their records. They don't play that way.
Yeah. But what really to me shows the talent of the Toto guys is that Weezer's version of Rosanna, though it is very good and it is almost identical in a lot of ways, the one thing they cannot get down, they do it well, but they cannot do it the way that Toto does, is Jeff Porcaro's drums. They can't get the drums down.
So you've already picked a song with a prominent, renowned shuffle beat, Fool in the Rain.
Yes.
And now we're going down that road again. And I guess Jeff was very influenced by that song when he came up with one of the most famous drum tracks on a pop hit record ever.
Yeah. People even refer to this as the Rosanna Shuffle. Just like they referred to Bernard Purdie's beat as the Purdie Shuffle. And he actually was the other influence for Jeff on this song. Steely Dan's Asia and the song Home at Last, and also Babylon Sisters from Gaucho. Those two songs also have this shuffle beat. David Paich wrote the song. And when he brought it to the band, Jeff said, hey, I know what I want to do on this song. And so he already had this idea in his head of doing something like Fool in the Rain, Home at Last, with this shuffle beat. And it was originally set to have a Bo Diddley beat, which is like the bum, 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 bum.
Shave and a haircut, 6-bit.
Known as the Bo Diddley beat. He did incorporate that. That's what the kick drum plays. So you hear that beat in the kick drum, but on top of it, he's playing the now known as Rosanna Shuffle. The shuffle is a basic drum pattern, but there's something about the way that he plays it and the touch that he has that is almost impossible to replicate. I have been going down like a huge rabbit hole here. I'm so far down into the rabbit hole now, as far as Jeff Porcaro, Steve Lukather, all these guys, but also even just different versions of Rosanna. There's two other drummers that I've heard play it live that can actually play it like Jeff. One is Simon Phillips, and he is also a session drummer who's played on lots and lots and lots of things and actually joined Toto in the 90s. He took over when Jeff passed away in 92. He took over his position in Toto. So they knew too that he was like one of the few drummers that could actually play like Jeff.
Yeah. Not a name a ton of people recognize, but a world-class drummer.
A world-class drummer who's played on a lot of albums that you probably wouldn't know he played on, like the Toto guys. The other one is Greg Bissonette, who's also a session drummer that's played on lots of albums, and he plays in Ringo Starr's All-Star Band. He's been in several incarnations of that, as has Steve Lukather. Those two guys can do it. The Weezer guy, he can't. He can play it. It's not like it sounds bad. It just doesn't sound right. And it's the hi-hats. And even Simon Phillips, when I've heard his live versions, kind of have this too. The hi-hat is just a little bit too, you can hear it too much. It's like too prominent. And a lot of what they're doing in this beat is they're playing ghost notes, which is like a really light tap on the snare that's kind of filling in between the snare hits. And a very light touch on the hi-hat that just kind of makes this sort of wash sound that it's just really hard to replicate.
Well, again, I'm not a drummer, but I know he does one-handed 16th notes on the hi-hat, which is somewhat unusual.
Yeah. And that's the other piece of this, is being able to play those 16th notes fast enough for it to make sense in the song. And it's really hard. And it's deceptive. In fact, this whole song is like that. It's kind of one of those deceptively simple songs where you're like, oh yeah, Rosanna, I've heard that a million times. It's whatever. It's catchy. But this is actually one of the songs that Rick Beato did on his series of what makes this song great. It was one of the early ones that he did. And, when he breaks this song down, you start to really get a sense of all the different pieces involved that come together and do make a really great song. And, I think it starts with that foundation with the drums. And that's how the song starts. It starts with a fill. Yeah. Then you get the piano, you get the bass coming in, playing that Bo Diddley beat. And the first verse is sung by Steve Lukather. This is another thing that I love about this song, is that Bobby Kimball, the lead singer, and Steve Lukather trade off verses. And when they were recording the song, now Bobby Kimball is one of those AOR singers that has a very high voice.
Yep. High tenor, strong high tenor.
But he can't sing the low parts. So this song starts not in Bobby's range. So Steve Lukather sings it. And I actually really like Steve's voice a lot.
Oh, yeah. No, he's a very good singer.
He's a really good singer. And I like the contrast between the voices, because then the second verse, once the music really comes in, the guitars come in, then you get that high soaring vocal from Bobby Kimball, which, according to Steve's autobiography, they had to work so hard to get his vocals. He had a drinking problem. He was very volatile just as a person. And that's why they ended up kicking him out of the band. He did come back to the band. There are live performances. There's one from 2007, actually. And he sounds really good. So he got his voice back, but he was just such a cokehead and such, that he like totally trashed his voice. But they got the take on this song. And, that soaring vocal is another thing that makes this song great. After you have the two verses, the song quiets down into this pre-chorus.
Not quite a year since she went away. Rosanna.
It's almost like they're whispering.
That's Lukather again with the softer voice.
Mm-hmm. And it's a really cool dynamic.
Yes.
And then before the chorus, there's a horn fill. And one of the things that Rick Beato points out, which I think is really, really cool too, is Jeff Porcaro plays a fill that follows the same rhythm pattern that the horns do. And it's a really cool fill. And you don't really, when he pointed that out, I was like, oh my God, that is really cool. And I didn't even really notice it that much. But if you listen to it, it is just really cool. Then you get into the chorus, which, is pretty catchy. But honestly, this is one of those songs that I actually think the verses and the pre-chorus are better than the actual chorus.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still sing along, but there's nothing that interesting about the chorus.
Meet you all the way, Rosanna. What does that even mean?
I don't know. And really, there's a lot of speculation about this song, too, because during this time when this song was written, Steve Porcaro was dating Rosanna Arquette. And for years, they denied that this song was about her. But in Luke's book, he does say, yeah, it's about her, and she admits, too, that, yes, I was around. But, it's actually a little bit weird that it is about her, because David Page wrote this song. Right. So that means he's writing a song about Steve Porcaro's girlfriend.
Well, she clearly inspired the title, at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's really about her, she left him in the song, so I don't know. But yeah, there's always been speculation about that. Like, is it about her? And I would think that she clearly was the inspiration of the name, since it just would be too coincidental otherwise. Anyway, Africa went to number 1 for them. This was a number 2 song. It was actually kept off the number 1 spot.
Should have been a number 1. Yeah.
It was kept off the number 1 spot by Don't You Want Me, another song we just had on the playlist, and Eye of the Tiger.
2 iconic songs. Yeah.
Yes. But you're right. It should have been a number 1.
Like 5 weeks at number 2. So it by all rights should have been a number 1. It's just bad timing.
Yeah.
A couple of notes. The horn section that you mentioned, famous players, Jim Horn on sax, Tom Scott on sax, zillions of sessions for those guys. The trombone player is James Pankow of Chicago, on whose album they would play on, that we'll talk about in a moment.
And actually, we also have to mention Lenny Castro on congas.
Right. Very important element.
Yes, that is an important element.
Another guy who's played on a zillion sessions.
Oh, and I forgot. One of the weirdest parts about this song, the synth solo.
It's really cool, though.
It's really cool, but it's pretty spacey. It sounds like it should be in a Styx song. Like it's almost a little bit out of place. I do think it's really cool, and I think the guitar solo is iconic. But that synth solo is a little bit odd.
It's very arranged, very layered. It's about 6 different synth parts, I think, layered together. And then the guitar solo comes in right after that, and that rips. The other interesting element of the song, so I think you've got the iconic drum beat, you've got the key change in the second half of the verse, you've got the layered synth solo, the great guitar solo, and then the coda, where they just go into this impromptu jam, and that really just shows you the incredible high level of musicianship at work here. Now, these guys are studio hotshots, so they're playing on some of the biggest name records, and they're coming in, and most of them are able to read music pretty well to be able to get to that level as a studio musician. But this is improv. This coda section, it's just totally off the cuff.
It starts out with that kind of honky tonk piano,
Yeah.
which David Page just went into, and the rest of the band just followed.
And Lukather just lets rip on the guitar. And then you mentioned Beato. Beato did a great extended interview with him and just demonstrated his incredible improv ability. He just picked some random backing track.
Well, it wasn't totally random. It was a song he played on. It was a Lionel Richie song. Running with the Night. Yeah. And Luke is like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I haven't played this in years. And he starts the song and he just rips into it.
Note perfect. And his guitar is so clean. The tone is so beautiful.
And it's not an easy solo.
I mean, it's just jaw dropping to watch talented guys do what they do, and
that's a great interview too.
Yeah,
check
it really
it out
is
on YouTube. It's like over an hour long.
It's long, and I was riveted the whole time.
Me too. I didn't want them to stop.
It cracked me up because Lukather has played on so many big records and met so many important people, and he is not shy about telling these stories. And he keeps starting to refer to his partying lifestyle, and it's like Beato wants to steer clear of that. He doesn't want to go down that avenue, trying to keep him on track. But all these guys seem like really nice, really friendly people by all accounts too.
Well, and they have to be, because they're walking into these sessions.
Yes.
And
yeah,
I mean, it doesn't matter if you are the best player around. You have to be someone that is easy to work with too,
right.
or they're not going to want you back.
Yes.
And that's what they were building a career on. He talks about that a lot. He talks about in his book a lot too, how they'd go to a session. They wouldn't know who was going to be there. They'd see the cases. They'd see all the guitar cases lined up and all, and then they'd identify who was there by what cases were there. Oh, okay, Lee Sklar's on this session, or, the Porcaro brothers, or even like David Foster was part of that group, and Jay Graydon.
Speaking of Lee Sklar, I went to the Lyle Lovett show.
Oh, he was in the band, right?
Yes. The rhythm section was Lee Sklar and Russ Kunkel.
Yep.
There's a Hall of Fame rhythm section right there. Talk about playing a million. I think Sklar's played on over 2,000 albums. It's just incredible.
It's incredible. And when the Toto guys started doing sessions, all of them played together with Boz Scaggs. Silk Degrees. Well, actually, Lukather played on the next album after that. But he was like 17. He was just a kid. And Jeff Porcaro was like 19 when he started.
I had no idea these guys were so young when they started out. I mean,
they were teenagers.
Right out of high school and still in high school in the case of Porcaro.
Yeah, and his big break was Steely Dan. Katie lied. And then he kind of brought in the other guys. They just kept getting called back because they were great players. They could play just on the fly. And they were nice guys and easy to work with.
And he would play on Donald Fagen's solo debut, which came out in 1982. We'll be talking about that at some point. So Rosanna wins the Grammy for Record of the Year. Didn't win Song of the Year, was nominated for Song of the Year. Always on My Mind. Willie Nelson was the Song of the Year at the 83 Grammys, rewarding the 1982 songs. You said they pulled out all the stops on this album. It sounds incredible. They were working with legendary engineer Al Schmidt, and they spent a lot of time on this record, and it paid dividends for them because Rosanna was a big hit out of the box. The Rosanna single came out before the album. The single came out end of March, and the album comes out first week of April. The Toto 4 album won the Grammy for Album of the Year and Producer of the Year. It goes quadruple platinum in the United States. Worldwide sales of about 6 million. And you already mentioned Africa was a number one hit.
Yeah, and actually, Lukather said when Page brought that song to the band, and, the lyrics, I think Jeff Porcaro actually helped write the lyrics. They've never been to Africa. They don't know anything about Africa. Yeah. And Lukather is like, what is this all about? And he just thought it was ridiculous. And he told the band that if this song is a hit, I will run down Hollywood Boulevard naked because there's no way this song is going to be a hit. And it went to number one.
Musically, it's a really fine single. Lyrically, it's pretty dopey.
It really is.
Rosanna it's a song about a girl. It's just typical rock lyrics. There's nothing that, meets you all the way. I don't know what that means. But the whole lyric to Africa, it's just, what?
And how they fit in like the Serengeti and like all these, it's just like they're really pushing it to try to get all these lyrics
in there.
Serengeti.
Making that flow. It's a great song. We're joking, but it's great.
It is. I love it.
The third song that I really love on this album is the ballad, I Won't Hold You Back. I think that is just a top tier ballad.
Yeah.
You know, we were plotting this episode, doing our preliminary list of songs for 1982. I figured that Chicago's Hard to Say I'm Sorry would have been one of the songs to make the list. It's not going to make the list. It'd probably be on our alternate playlist because it's so similar to I Won't Hold You Back. They're very similar songs. And I think I Won't Hold You Back is the superior song.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I do think it is a really good ballad. I think Hard to Say I'm Sorry is more catchy, and maybe that's why it was a bigger hit. That Chicago album is all about David Foster. And even though the Toto guys played on it, he wrote those songs with Peter Cetera and kind of orchestrated this whole thing, produced the album. And he was actually one of the guys that they early on and for years were involved with and played on albums with him and wrote songs with him. He was really pissed that they won the Grammys that year and not Chicago. And after that happened, that kind of like caused a break between they never looked at him again. Mm-hmm.
Really? Did not know that. Yeah, you know, this was Chicago's big comeback. They'd been on a commercial slide since about 78. Obviously, you had the tragedy of Terry Kath's death, their uber talented guitarist with misadventure with a gun.
He was one of the singers, too.
Well, one of the singers. Their first hit single was Make Me Smile. That was Terry Kath on the lead vocals. Mm-hmm. And then songs they had recorded earlier actually charted after that. Like, does anybody really know what time it is? When the Chicago Transit Authority album came out, the singles didn't hit. You know, it was kind of a popular underground record on underground FM radio. And they didn't start to have hit singles until later on into the 70s. That album came out in 69. Anyhow, I mean, they've been consistently recording hit albums and singles throughout the 70s. And then they're starting to dry up.
Yeah.
They're starting to run short of songs. Terry Kath dies. Their last couple of albums didn't hit the commercial mark. Chicago 14 was the last one. And they actually got dropped by their record label, Columbia, which, I mean, consistent hit maker for this label for over a decade that cut them loose. So they got their new lease on life. They got a new label. They got Irving Azoff to manage them, the Eagles manager. And then they got David Foster in, and it was a whole new sound for them.
And it was really Peter Cetera's band at this point, Foster and Cetera.
Right. So you got Foster coming in. He immediately strikes up a kinship with Peter Cetera. He's like, okay, this is the guy who's going to make hits for us. We want his vocals front and center. He's a ballad singer. We're going to utilize his strengths. And I'm a good ballad writer.
And both the singles from that album that were hits were ballads.
Right.
Let Me Tomorrow was the other one.
His breakthrough, David Foster, was After the Love Is Gone on the Earth, Wind, and Fire album, I Am, from 79.
Yeah.
You've been kind of digging into his recordings.
He and Jay Graydon had a band called Airplay.
Right.
And they first recorded that song for that album. And that album is really good. They're great songwriters. And, you know, they've got all the great session guys with them.
So it's a reboot for Chicago, a more modern sound. They wanted to minimize the horns. People didn't want to hear, or at least radio programmers were telling them, you know, we don't want anything with horns. Labels were saying, if you ditch the horns, we'll sign you. And they're like, we're Chicago. That's what we're all, that's our whole
their trademark
thing.
Of
that's
their
our
sound.
thing.
Yeah.
They're really good players too. I mean, to a man, the horn section, all those guys are hot players. Great rhythm section. Terry Kath was a guitarist Jimi Hendrix said was better than him. I mean, all these guys could play their asses off. But the music's just getting more and more boring here at the end of the 70s. And then David Foster really is ushering in the sound of the 80s. And when I say the sound of the 80s, it's the sounds I don't care for from the 1980s. Yeah. I really liked Hard to Say I'm Sorry when that was a hit. And I liked Love Me Tomorrow, too. I think I probably taped them both
I do, too.
Off the radio. But outside of the two singles, not a fan of the record.
Which is kind of pretty much how I feel about Toto's album, too, really.
The total 4 singles are better than the Chicago
The singles are better, and there's 3 singles that are good. But Toto, I mean, they were really popular at this time, but they were huge in Japan. So they continued to have a very long career, not necessarily in the US. They really never had hits after this album, but they continually made albums and still do up until the more recent years. Although there's a lawsuit that came about for the name with the Porcaro family wanting to keep the name and not letting Lukather use it. And so that became a big messy thing. But when I see all the albums and all the songs and all the things that they played on, I feel like the Toto song should have been better. Like they should have had more songs that were hits later that really resonated with the public like this album did, but they really never did again.
They're super talented musicians, nice guys. They could play charts, they could improv, they could vamp.
And they co-wrote a lot of these songs too.
Yep.
And they didn't get credit, but there are a lot of songs that they come into the session and they've kind of got a skeleton that they present them of a song and they will build the song, so that really shows their talents too.
So you got all this musical ability, multiple strong singers, vocalists in the group, just a lack of a lot of good songs when you look at their albums.
Yeah.
So the Chicago record, that's the big comeback. And then their next record would be much bigger. A couple of years later, Chicago 17 would actually be their biggest selling album. Prior to the Chicago record coming out, just after the Toto album comes out, Dionne Warwick releases an album called Friends in Love. Now, she'd have a bigger hit later in the year with a Barry Gibb song, Heartbreaker, great song, late in 82. The hits off of this record, the first single was For You, which is pretty good ballad. Dionne Warwick's a great singer. And she's still a big hit maker at this point in time. I mean, she's still cranking out big hits well into the 80s. And then the second single was this goopy ballad with Johnny Mathis that I really don't care if I ever hear again. So multiple Toto guys played on that record. In May, when the Chicago single Hard to Say I'm Sorry comes out, Melissa Manchester releases a single called You Should Hear How She Talks About You. Now, this was kind of a left field big hit for her. I kind of think of her in the same category as Bette Midler. New York, Jewish, kind of Broadway torch song, ballad singer type. But this is a zippy, poppy, kind of new wave hit, and it's catchy, and it was a big hit for her, and it actually won a Grammy for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance for 1982. And the Toto guys played on that record. Her hits before that were Midnight Blue and Don't Cry Out
That's
Loud.
it. I was like, I know there's a song she sings that I know.
Inside.
Yes.
Yes, that was Melissa Manchester. And apparently she had to be, quote, dragged kicking and screaming into the studio to record this song.
Because it just wasn't her style.
No. But it was a hit. It was a pretty sizable hit for her. So that comes out in May. The Chicago album comes out early June. The next month, mid-July, Warren Zevon releases The Envoy. Now, Warren Zevon, we've talked about a little bit because we had Werewolves of London on our playlist, courtesy of our guest, John Windus. That was his selection for 78. Warren, at this point, is about running out of steam. He's got all kinds of substance abuse issues. I've got this record on vinyl. I don't have it on CD, so I never listened to it. I listened to the single, and I didn't really care for it. I don't know. Have you listened to The Envoy?
No, actually, I haven't. And I was going to, but I thought, I've never really heard a Warren Zevon album that I've wanted to listen to more than once. I like the songs that I know of his, but I don't know. He always seems kind of boring to me. So, but no, I didn't listen to this.
I'm still just kind of starting to get into his catalog. He's got a real cult following, a lot of famous advocates, David Letterman among many.
Oh, yeah.
But this is not one of his better albums. It has its supporters, but I mean, as far as Warren Zevon is concerned, most people would look to Excitable Boy as his peak, his second record, and then the self-titled album he put out before that. And then after The Envoy comes out, he didn't release anything for about 5 years. So he was kind of in the wilderness for a while. And then REM played on his next record, kind of revived his career.
And he was in the Hindu Love Gods, so they formed that band.
Which is I really enjoy that album. Mm-hmm. All right, so 3 days after The Envoy comes out, this may be my revelatory moment for 1982. So for 81, my revelatory moment, my discovery was Split Ends, Corroboree Waiata album, and the great songs on that. Obviously, I'd heard of Split Ends. I'd heard their music before, but I'd never listened to any of their studio albums, and it just hit home how great they were. Donna Summer releases an album in 82, self-titled. Now, she had been on Casablanca Records during the disco era, which was the big disco label.
And Kiss.
And Kiss, yes. Had massive success. But now we're 3 years post Disco Demolition Day. Disco is dead. And disco isn't really dead, as we have shown on multiple occasions. There's still plenty of songs with that disco feel that are selling. But if you're Donna Summer and if you're the Bee Gees, you are just inextricably tied to that label. And there's no escaping it. The Bee Gees were the kings of disco. Donna Summer was the queen of disco. And in 1982, record labels and radio programmers wanted nothing to do with that term. So despite the fact that the Bee Gees put out a really good record in 81 called Living Eyes, nobody wanted to play their music, which makes that Dionne Warwick record significant, and many other records that came out in this era, the Barbra Streisand album, the duet she did with Barry Gibb, and multiple other examples. They started writing for others, and they're still getting their music out there. They're just not performing it themselves. It's still unmistakably Barry Gibb's music, stylistically, but it's other vocalists now. So they're still having success selling records with other artists. Donna Summer was one of the first signings to Geffen Records, David Geffen's label, after he departed Asylum and started this new record label named after himself. I mean, his major coup was signing John Lennon to get the Double Fantasy album. But his first female signing was Donna Summer. And the Wanderer album comes out in 1980. The Wanderer, the single, was a big hit. It was like number 3. Kind of a new wave feel, not a disco song. Her next record, during the whole disco run of hits, she's recording with Giorgio Moroder and Pete Bellot. Moroder doing the music, Bellot lyrics. They put another album in the can that was due to come out in 1981. David Geffen shelved it, said, I want you to go back in the studio. I want you to work with Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones, obviously, had produced Michael Jackson's Off the Wall album, major, major hit. Had hits with the Brothers Johnson and others.
And had The Dude in 81.
Yeah, his record, The Dude, comes out in 81, has multiple hits on it, sung by James Ingram, Just Once and 100 Ways, a couple of really good ballads. And then, of course, later on in 82, the biggest album of our lifetimes comes out, Thriller, produced by Quincy Jones. Oh, by the way, the Toto guys are all over that record, too.
Yeah, they just happen to be on there, too.
Yeah, Thriller is going to get a show of its own, so we're going to leave that for later. So this Donna Summer album comes out between Off the Wall and Thriller. And the lead track on this record is called Love is in Control, parentheses, Finger on the Trigger. What a killer track this is.
Love it.
I'm listening to this, and this is like the greatest Michael Jackson song that Michael Jackson ever sang on. It's an incredible track, and it's totally in the style of his productions, Off the Wall and Thriller. It would have slotted perfectly on those albums. And this is as good as anything on those records. It is so good.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, how did I miss that? It reached number 10 on Billboard. So obviously getting played somewhere. Were they not playing it on Seattle radio? I don't remember hearing this at the time. Do you remember hearing this on the radio?
No, I'd never heard it before either until you pointed it out to me, and it's great. It's so good.
Oh, God.
But no, I had not heard it.
It's a really good album, but there's 2 songs in particular that I think are outstanding. That's one. It's the lead track and the biggest hit single. A lesser hit on this album, and you want to talk about coming out of left field. Donna Summer's kind of a fascinating character. She's having these disco hits with these really racy songs, very sexually provocative songs. I mean, her first big hit is basically her having an orgasm in the studio.
In the studio, yeah.
Love to Love You, Baby. But she's also a very religious person, very religious family, person of deep faith, and she was kind of torn about this. But she also has this theatricality about her. She has this background in musical theater, and she's a very funny woman. She probably could have been a stand-up comedian if that's the path she wanted to choose. So she kind of looked at it through the lens of, okay, she's acting out these parts. This isn't me. I'm not this sex kitten character. I'm just playing a part. That's kind of her approach and how she justified it with her faith, I guess. But there's also this hippie element to her. She really kind of came out of the underground and was hanging out with a lot of hippies, in the late 60s, early 70s. Her career, she had to go to Europe first. I mean, she was in Germany. She's based in Germany when she started having hits in America. Well, the song she covers was actually written by John Anderson of Yes and Vangelis. So John and Vangelis put out a couple, 3 albums together, I think, right? You've listened to these.
Yeah. And they came out between 80 and 83.
So had you heard their version of State of Independence before you heard Donna Summer's version?
Yes, I totally know this song. And so you mentioned the song State of Independence, and I was like, oh, I'll go listen to it. And then when I put on Donna Summer, I was like, oh, it's this State of Independence? I didn't make the connection that it was the same song.
Unusual choice of cover.
Yeah.
Very interesting arrangement to this song. I texted Cheryl the other day. I said, it's like ABBA meets Peter Gabriel. That's the feel I get from this.
Yes.
It's got that kind of Biko feel to it.
Yeah. And there's an all-star choir.
You're not kidding about all-star choir.
Lionel Richie, Dionne Warwick, Michael Jackson, Christopher Cross, James Ingram, Kenny Loggins, Peggy Lipton, Patty Austin. I knew Michael McDonald was going to show up in there, but yes, Michael McDonald and Stevie Wonder are all part of the chorus.
Peggy Lipton, for those who don't know, I mean, our parents would recognize the name, but she was on the Mod Squad, and she married Quincy Jones, and their daughter is Rashida Jones. Yeah.
Oh, right. And actually, she's on one of the other songs on this album. There's another song where they have a whole bunch of people singing, and she's one of them. Yeah, but the musicians that are on this are pretty big names, and all people that have worked with Quincy.
And maybe, just maybe, that kind of inspired We Are the World, getting all these famous people together.
It's a lot of the same people there.
Yeah.
Yep.
But 2 really incredible singles.
It really works for her, though, which I think is really cool that she could take this song that is in a more synthesizer with, John Anderson's kind of angelic voice.
And is hippie nonsense lyrics, shablimini, shablamana, what?
Yes, and make it into something that's actually pretty cool.
I'm eating up every shablimini and shablamana on this record. It's just so uplifting.
Well, and you get that kind of shablimini shablamana from Michael Jackson in Thriller and from Lionel Richie on his solo album. So, this song does fit in with those other songs. But I think it's an inspired choice. I don't know how it came about, but it's interesting.
So for me, this was the major discovery in researching Toto's 1982, is finding this album. The whole album's good. Those 2 songs really stand out, but there's not a weak track on the record, but it didn't sell. And I think the fault may lie more on the label here. I mean, obviously Donna Summer is top tier vocalist, super talented.
Well, and she had a big hit the next year with She Works Hard for the Money.
Exactly.
So it wasn't like her career was over.
I think Geffen just failed her here.
Yeah.
I look at 2 things. The album cover. Her album covers are kind of lame across the board if you look at her whole.
Yeah.
But this album cover is just boring. And then, we're in 1982 now. You better have some cool videos to go with these songs. And the video sucks. I mean, it's just, the editing on it is horrible. It's just horrible. This should have been a much bigger album than it was. But you've got the combination of Geffen's failures and just the whole disco millstone around Donna Summer's neck. And she would have a big hit the next year because video. That video was played nonstop. She Works Hard for the Money. Nonstop.
Yeah.
All right. So that was a great find, the Donna Summer out. Now, the next month, you get Michael McDonald's solo single, I Keep Forgetting. And I know this is a song you were considering for the playlist.
Yes. I love this song. This song is a perfect example of Steve Lukather's little chicken, 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 chicken guitar sound that would be very prominent in Thriller. And it's just kind of like a background sound. It starts the song, you hear it really prominently at the beginning. But yeah, I love the song. Am I not picking it for the playlist? I guess I'm not.
It's funny because I'm going to have a hard time keeping those Donna Summer songs off the playlist, but I'm not choosing them this week, but they're definitely under consideration. So that's a killer single by Michael McDonald, comes out in August. Multiple Toto guys on that. Love Me Tomorrow, the second single from Chicago 16, comes out in September. And then in October, this song is going to be on the playlist. Both Cheryl and I picked it on a preliminary list. Don Henley's solo album called I Can't Stand Still comes out in October that year. The second single from that album, Dirty Laundry, composed by Don Henley and Danny Korchmar. First single was called Johnny Can't Read, which is kind of an atypical song for Don Henley. It's this up-tempo, kind of new wave sounding.
But it's got a 50s sound to it.
Yeah. They made a video for this song. It's a dark song,
it's
dark
disturbing.
video. Yeah, it is.
Yes.
I could see why it didn't get played a lot on MTV. And they never did make a video for Dirty Laundry, which is the song on this album.
Which is kind of odd, really, that they didn't, because we're right in the beginnings of the height of MTV. I mean, we really are still ramping up, though. MTV hasn't quite taken hold yet.
Yeah, but this is a really cool song. So this is Henley's first solo offering. He'd had the hit duet with Stevie Nicks, Leather and Lace, which was under consideration for 1981's playlist for me. And I think you were under consideration for the other Stevie Nicks duet that Stop Dragging My Heart.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Henley's coming out with solo records. Glenn Frey starts coming out with solo. Randy Meisner had already released a solo record, had a minor hit in 1980. And, of course, Joe Walsh was already going concern before he joined the Eagles.
Yeah, he was already a solo artist.
This song, it hooks you right away with that organ part. And this is Steve Porcaro. Now, you mentioned he's more known for his work with synthesizers. He's a very technically oriented guy, a boffin, I guess you might call him, very knowledgeable about all the electronics and how to program them, get all the different sounds out of it. And it's funny that they used a Farfisa organ, because that's a throwback instrument. That's going back to like the mid-60s.
Yeah, it's a very 60s sound.
Mid-60s garage bands.
The way they use it in this song, it's very dark. It has this eerie sort of foreboding sound to it.
There's a pulse, like a pulse behind it. And he tweaked it. There's definitely some other electronics at work there.
Yeah.
That he used to kind of tweak the sound of the Farfisa organ.
But it's really cool. I mean, really, it's what immediately draws you into the song. Like, this is different. It's
a great hook.
Is something different. Mm-hmm.
As far as Porcaro is concerned, the keyboard aspect of this song, this is one of the earlier uses of the emulator on a record. So the teletype sounds that you heard, the teletype, my dad was a radio man, and I used to love to go into the room where the AP teletype machine was. And I just thought it was the coolest thing that any breaking news that's happening in the world, I'm going to know it before anybody else. If I'm standing by this machine, it's going to come out of this thing. And that's Associated Press, UPI, all these wire services, breaking news stories. That's how they get distributed. They get sent out electronically to these machines in radio and television and newspapers, and they print out endless supplies of paper. It's just constantly printing 24/7.
Yeah.
And then when it's time to read the news, you call it rip and read news, where you just rip the page off the teletype and go plop down your seat and start talking to the mic, reading it. So the sound effect of that on here was produced with an emulator, which was been a very expensive piece of technology. At this point, it was brand new. There's only a few in the world. And I think Porcaro kind of hinted that he had an idea how he could use one of these things on the record. And within a couple of days, it showed up that's how much pull that Don Henley had at this point. But the song is about the media and sensationalism in news reporting. And it's a topic that hit pretty close to home for Don Henley, because he had himself a touch of scandal in 1980, and pretty lurid, actually. It was an underage prostitute that overdosed in his house. And he kind of skated on this. Henley got lawyers and fought it in court. But yeah, this is a pretty nasty scandal for Don Henley.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a personal element to this lyric for him. Danny Korchmar, I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we talked about Lee Sklar and Russ Kunkel. Leland Sklar, the bass player, Russ Kunkel, the drummer, Danny Korchmar, guitar player. That was the band behind Carole King on Tapestry, and then James Taylor's breakthrough albums, and then 8 billion other singer-songwriter albums that came out in the 70s. Korchmar, also known as Cooch, he's worked together with James Taylor for many, many, many records, but he was also really instrumental in the Don Henley's first solo albums as well. So Dirty Laundry is a big hit. It's a crossover hit. It's played on FM rock radio. It's played on Top 40 AM radio. Got to number 3 on Billboard, sold over 1 million. And that's Steve Porcaro on that Farfisa and the emulator sounds. And then you got 2 guitar solos on this record. The first one is Joe Walsh from the Eagles. The second one, Steve Lukather.
Yeah, which I think it's cool that he uses 2 different guitars on those solos because you do hear a difference there. And Timothy B. Schmidt was on bass on this album too.
And backing vocal. And Jeff Porcaro drums on the record too.
Yeah.
It's a great record. Don Henley's a wonderful singer. He's still evolving as a lyricist. I think it would really fully flower on his next solo album, which was a much bigger hit, Building the Perfect Beast, 2 years later. But his lyrics really have bite on this.
Yeah, they do. They have an impact.
Yeah, it's still a relevant topic.
It is. I think the combination of the music, the topic, and the lyrics really make this song something that is kind of a timeless song in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Greg Ladani is the engineer. He's no longer with us, but he co-produced and engineered the Henley solo records. They sound wonderful.
But I think going forward, his solo albums will sound more 80s. Like they definitely have an 80s sound to them. This song does not necessarily have like that pigeonholed sound to it like it's from the 80s.
No, I mean, there's keyboards on this, but they're not overwhelming the album. They'd be much more prominent on his next record.
Yeah.
And in fact, the second track on this album, I get a kick out of it. It's You Better Hang Up. It's just kind of like this dumb, like almost Crazy Horse stomping rock song, just goofy, which again, it's just, you don't really think of Don Henley in that, singing that in that kind of mood. I mean, his songs tend to be more serious.
Seems very serious to me. Yeah. He doesn't seem like, I mean, Joe Walsh is goofy.
Yeah.
Don Henley does not seem like he has a goofy bone in his body.
No, but this could have easily been a Joe Walsh song. I mean, it's got a humorous bent to it. And it's just a fun, dumb, stomping rocker. And then the third track is a really good ballad, too. It's a really slow-paced ballad, Long Way Home.
And even Johnny Can't Read, I honestly would not even know that was him if I just heard that song and didn't know it was him singing. His vocals sound really different to me. They don't sound like him. And it's a very 50s kind of pop sound to it. I did listen to this whole album and nothing really stood out to me that was that interesting. But I think that Dirty Laundry is one of the best songs of the 80s, honestly.
I think it's his best song.
I think so too. Yeah. But I think it's all around a great song.
Now, there was a bit of business I wanted to take care of. We're going to rewind back. In 1981, we had our AOR episode where we talked about 4 key albums that were released in 81, one of them being Foreigner 4. Well, a single released in January of 1982, the third single release from Foreigner 4. And I'm finally realizing it's got to be on my playlist. That's Jukebox Hero. It is such a cool song. The lyrics tell a story, and they're well written. You've got a typical great vocal performance from Lou Gramm, who's really pushing it.
Yeah.
And then the producer on this record is Mutt Lange, and they took forever to do this. It took about a year to record this. This is where Mutt Lange is really starting to come into his own as this ultimate perfectionist producer. His next job would be Def Leppard Pyromania, which is famous for being basically pieced together note by note in the studio by Mutt Lange. But prior to Foreigner 4, he'd worked with AC/DC. And, he'd cleaned up their sound, but, there's not like a bunch of synths and backing vocals on the AC/DC records. There's still AC/DC records. But Mutt Lange's fingerprint is all over this song, particularly with the backing vocals. That would become a hallmark of his. So on the chorus, got stars in his eyes, jukebox, those backing vocals. And his voice is always part of that backing vocal too. And then, of course, we talked about it before, but he brings in Thomas Dolby to add keyboard magic to this record.
Right.
which he did amazingly on Waiting for a Girl Like You, which I thought would be the song that would end up on the playlist, but alas, no.
And Thomas Dolby is another one of those who's played on a lot of albums you wouldn't know he was on.
Right, and he was a nobody when this, but later on in 82, he wouldn't be a nobody anymore. His first solo album comes out.
Right, he didn't have any solo hits or anything at that time.
But Lou Gramm is top-tier vocalist. You got Mutt Lange with an incredible production job. But what really drove this home for me, this song rocks like a mother. This is right up there with the hardest rocking songs that have ever made the top 40. The instrumental break on this song, that's straight metal.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah, it kicks ass.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I think this was the last song they finished before they put the album in the can. And I read a funny story about it. Mutt Lange had to leave because he had to start working on the Pyromania album. So he didn't actually finish in the producer's chair. So Mick Jones is basically sleeping in the studio. He's moved a bed into the studio, trying to get this thing finished so they can get out of the way so Hall & Oates can use Electric Lady Studios. And apparently he'd gotten the idea that he wanted to take those backing vocals off of Jukebox Hero, and everybody was like, what are you doing, man? You can't do that.
That's one of the best parts of this song.
I know. Fortunately, he saw the error of his ways, but they had to bring the engineers back in and go through this whole elaborate mixing session to remix the record to get the backing vocals back on it in time to finish the record. But it's a good thing they did, because it would not be nearly the same without those Mutt Lange backing vocals. Foreigner had a lot of great hits, but I think we talked about this before. Lyrically, they haven't aged as well as some of the other bands like Journey.
Yeah.
Because Journey was more female-friendly. I mean, they were very much more aware.
They were more about relationship.
Right, yeah. And Foreigner was more about the predatory male, on the prowl.
But Jukebox Hero, it doesn't really fit into that.
No, yeah, it tells a great story about, a kid hanging outside. He's hearing the band playing. He can't get inside. And he hears that guitar. He just knows he's got to get a guitar. And as soon as he starts playing it, he knows that that's going to be his lot in life. And then years later, he's the big star, and the next kid's coming around. It's just a fun story.
Yeah. Well, I will say that Jukebox Hero and that album, Foreigner 4, was one of my favorite albums at the time in 1982 that I owned and listened to a lot. So I love it too.
Yeah, I had the 45 record of Waiting for a Girl Like You. I would have taped Urgent and Jukebox Hero. So all three of those singles were killers, but the one that really resonates the most for me in 2024 is Jukebox Hero. I'm won over. It's going on the playlist for me.
Okay.
But the early part of 1982 certainly belonged to Toto, and they would reap the rewards of the Grammys in 1983, and that would help boost sales of the record some more. I think 6 singles in all off the record. 3 of them were pretty big hits, top 10s. And then Make Believe, I think, is a pretty good song, too, which is the second track on the record that was released as a single. But the song that we are choosing for the playlist is Rosanna, and that is going on alongside Foreigner's Jukebox Hero and Don Henley's Dirty Laundry this week. Although, again, I got a feeling I'm going to come back and have to pick one of those 2 Donna Summer songs, because right now I'm really digging both of those.
Well, I think that we're finding that 1982... I mean, we knew that 1981 had a lot of singles, and I think 1982 is also just chock full of great songs. And it's really been difficult because you have the carryover from 81, a lot of songs that were hits in 82 that we're picking that actually came out in 1981. So maybe that will happen in 83. We'll have songs that will carry over from 82. This is my favorite era, really, of music. I mean, between 80 and 83 are just incredible amounts of not just singles, but albums too. Not necessarily in 81, but in 82, lots of great albums. And it's been hard to pick songs.
I need to go dig up my old cassettes that I recorded as a kid off the radio and see what songs that I recorded from these years, because there were a lot of classics and songs that I still enjoy to this day. But that's going to wrap up our Toto podcast. We'll pick a few more songs from 1982 when we next convene. We're not quite halfway through the year yet. The Toto album came out at the beginning of April in 1982. That's coming up next time we get together. But until then, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
And we'll chat with you next time. Take care, everybody.